This is Global Fest for the Middle East. The earliest civilizations in the Middle East have their roots in the Sumerian Babylonian cultures in Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in the Fertile Crescent region. These permanent settlements began during the Neolithic era. The early Mesopotamians developed complex cities, centralized governments, had traditional economic systems at first, show evidence of complex belief systems, most of which were polytheistic, established clearly defined social classes, had specialized jobs in society, meaning not everyone was a farmer, and consequently excelled in the production of artwork, architecture, roads, bridges, and other public works. The Mesopotamians developed well-organized cities with centralized leadership, and its various peoples eventually engaged in empire building. Life in early Mesopotamia began between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, located in modern-day Iraq. Lack of natural barriers made the Fertile Crescent a natural place for migrating people to settle. However, this also made it prone to attack by invaders as well. There will be many different groups of competing people in this part of the world over time. The Fertile Crescent is referred to as the cradle of civilization because it's one of the oldest known settled communities. One of the first of these settled groups of people were the Sumerians, who emerged 5,000 years ago and who built ziggurat temples and developed a form of writing called cuneiform, written on stone tablets. The Sumerian civilization gave rise to another civilization later, the Akkadian civilization. The Akkadians established the world's first empire and was the parent culture to two other empires, the Assyrians and the Babylonians. These early empires had strong leaders interested in expanding their territory. The most famous of the Babylonian kings was Hammurabi, who developed what is thought to be the world's first written legal code. This code was based on social class and was not equitable. However, it created order in society and will influence later legal traditions. One of the most well-known Assyrian rulers was Ashurbanipal. In addition to warfare, stone reliefs, and brutality, Ashurbanipal also valued Babylonian culture. Ashurbanipal established what is believed to be the world's first library, filled with cuneiform tablets, including a famous work of literature called the Epic of Gilgamesh, a flood story. Another group of people to emerge close to the Fertile Crescent and who had contact with the Assyrians and the Babylonians were the Hittites, who inhabited portions of Asia Minor, or modern-day Turkey and Syria. The Hittites developed iron weaponry and chariots for warfare. Two of the world's oldest monotheistic faiths emerged in the Middle East, including Zoroastrianism and Judaism. Zoroastrianism is believed to emerge between 1700 and 500 before Common Era, and was based on the idea that the world was created by a single god named Ahura Mazda. Zoroastrian beliefs included concepts like good versus evil and angels. Zoroastrianism was widely adopted later by the Persians. Judaism is believed to have emerged following a covenant made by Abraham with God, with the Hebrews, a Semitic people, as the chosen people. It is thought that Judaism emerged as early as 2000 BCE, but was more clearly defined as a faith following the 900s BCE. Important prophets include Moses, and beliefs include the Ten Commandments and the Tanakh, which includes the Torah. The Hebrews established powerful kingdoms under leaders like David and Solomon, who built a famous temple in Jerusalem. The Hebrews were attacked by various groups, including the Assyrians and the Babylonians. The Neo-Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar captured the Hebrews at one point, forcing them to live in Babylon around 587 BCE. This became known as the Babylonian captivity. Judaism became a more formalized religion around the 400s BCE, with the forced migrations in their early history. The period of time between 600 BCE and 600 CE, or Common Era, was a time of empire building in the Middle East. One of the most notable empires was the Persian Empire, which traces its origins to the Achaemenid dynasty between 550 and 331 BCE. One of the most famous rulers was Darius the Great, who helped the Persians reach their height. The Persian Empire stretched across modern-day Iraq, Iran, parts of Egypt, and Asia Minor. Darius built a capital at Persepolis and divided his territories into satraps, or organized units, each with its own leader who reported to Darius. Darius adopted Zoroastrianism, but showed tolerance to all faiths and had a 2,000-mile-long transportation network and trade route called the Royal Road. The seemingly invincible Persians fought several famous battles against the Greeks, which they lost, during the 500s through 400s BCE. The Persians played a major role in the Greek Peloponnesian Wars, in which Greek city-states engaged in a civil war of the city-states, or it was a war of the city-states led by Sparta and Athens. Sparta received help from the Persians and won these wars to defeat the Athenians around 431, beginning in 431 BCE to 404 BCE. Other famous Persian rulers include Cyrus the Great, who was particularly revered for his wisdom and tolerance, as well as Xerxes. The Persians were later conquered by Alexander the Great, who blended Persian culture with Greek, Egyptian, and Indian cultures to create what is referred to today as Hellenistic or Greek-like culture. Following Alexander the Great's conquering of Persia, other groups will retake the territory, and other Persian empires emerged, including the Parthians from 247 to 224 CE, as well as the Sassanid Empire between 224 and 651 CE. Another group of people in the Middle East who had contact with people from across the Mediterranean included the Phoenicians, who emerged in what is now Lebanon and Jordan. They established a phonetic alphabet and a powerful maritime trading center, including Carthage in North Africa. The Carthaginians later fought the Punic Wars in the 200s CE against the Roman Empire, led by a man named Hannibal. Parts of the Middle East will also be taken over by the Byzantine Empire, which was the eastern portion of what had been the Roman Empire. The biggest conquests by the Byzantines into the Middle East occurred under Emperor Justinian as he attempted to revive a Roman Empire. This was ultimately not successful. The Byzantine Empire dominated much of the Middle East, along with Persian civilizations, until the development of Islam. Perhaps the most important cultural and social development in the Middle East was the emergence of Islam around 622 CE and the eventual rise of powerful Islamic caliphates like the Umayyad and Abbasid caliphates. Islam is closely linked to both Judaism and Christianity. It emerged on the Arabian Peninsula, based on the teachings and life of the Prophet Muhammad, who had a vision while meditating close to Mecca. By 622, Muhammad and his followers were persecuted and forced out of Mecca. Muhammad died in 632. The Islamic holy book is the Quran, with Islamic beliefs centered around the 5 pillars of Islam. The official language of Islam is Arabic. Early Muslims created a system of religious law, or laws, called Sharia law. After Muhammad's death, religious communities were ruled over by a caliph, which means successor in Arabic. Muhammad was followed by a caliph, his father-in-law, named Abu Bakr. Arguments over subsequent successors will result in a split in Islam. Today, there are Sunni Muslims, who make up over 70% of the religion, Shia Muslims, with over 29%, and Sufi Muslims, who make up fewer than 1%. Sunni Muslims eventually established the Umayyad Caliphate between 661 and 750 CE, which conquered the Sassanid Persians and established an empire across the Middle East and across North Africa and Spain. The Spanish Muslim world became known as Al-Andalus, with remnants of this influence present even today throughout Spain. The Umayyad were followed by the Abbasid Caliphate between 750 and 1258 BC or CE, which spanned across the Middle East and North Africa. Many Muslims were expelled from Spain during the Reconquista period between 718 to the 1400s CE, or during the European Middle Ages. The Reconquista was when Christians reconquered Spain for Christians and resulted in expulsion and even death for many Muslims as well as Jewish inhabitants. Some of the greatest Muslim scholars emerged from the Umayyad and Abbasid caliphates, making major contributions in math, science, and exploration. Early Muslim scholars created advanced technology like the astrolabe, which was used for exploration by European sailors hundreds of years later. Abbasid scholars popularized the use of Arabic numbers and created algebra, and also helped contribute to the field of medicine by creating textbooks. Later scholars, like Averroes, translated Greek texts into Arabic, later reintroducing these ancient texts to medieval Europe. Nomadic Turkish people, like the Seljuks, who had converted to Islam, will gradually take over Asia Minor and parts of the eastern Mediterranean and Persia from the Abbasids, beginning in the 900s CE. These Seljuk warriors were the Muslims who were fighting the religious wars known as the Crusades against Christians in Europe for control of the Holy Land. The Crusades, from 1095 to 1291, were ultimately unsuccessful for Christians, but considered a triumph for the Seljuk Muslim Turks. The Crusades led to an increase in contact between the medieval European world and Eastern world, and a resurgence of trade that many believe helped get Europe out of the Dark Ages. One of the most famous Islamic leaders was Saladin, who recaptured Jerusalem in 1287 and was known for the tolerance he showed those he conquered. However, the Crusades also resulted in years of distrust and anger between the Muslims and Christian worlds. Following the Crusades, Muslim Turks in parts of Asia Minor were overrun by the Asian warriors called the Mongols, who had taken over most of Asia and controlled the profitable Silk Road trading network, as well as parts of Russia in Europe, establishing a massive empire. By the late 1200s, parts of the Middle East were controlled by the Mongols, who had set up one of their empires there, or khanates. This Ilkhan Khanate survived until a group of people called the Ottoman Turks drove them out under the rule of Osman between 1280 and 1326 CE. By the late 1200s, parts of the Middle East were controlled by the Mongols, who had set up one of their empires there, also called khanates. This Ilkhan Khanate survived until a group of people called the Ottoman Turks drove them out under the rule of Osman between 1280 and 1326 CE, and established an empire that would last until after World War I. The Ottoman conquerors were dealt the final blow to the shrinking Byzantine Empire, which eventually fell to the Ottomans in 1453 Common Era. The Ottoman Turks' conquest of Constantinople in 1453 was led by Ottoman leader Suleiman the Magnificent. Suleiman glorified his new city, introducing Islam as the dominant religion. The Ottomans instituted traditional practices throughout their empire, including devshirme, which was a system of recruiting Christian males into the elite army forces they had, known as the Janissaries. It offered Christians social mobility in an otherwise Muslim-dominated society. The Ottomans carefully organized their empire, dividing the territory into millets, or administrative territories, all of which were led by the emperor of the Ottomans, known as the Sultan. The Ottomans began their decline following Suleiman's rule, who ruled between 1520 and 1566 Common Era. The Ottomans were further weakened after attempting to push into European territory following the siege of Vienna in 1683. Europeans banded together to resist the invasion and push them back into Asia Minor. The Ottomans never again gained a foothold in Europe. The Ottomans will have much contact with the Safavid Empire during the late 1500s and early 1600s, with much cultural exchange between the two cultures. The Safavids will fall in the 1700s in Persia, with the Ottoman Empire surviving until the early 1900s. Thanks for listening. Bye.